I'm Chris M. Slowecki. I'm the managing editor of DIA's Global Forum, and today I have the honor of being in the DIA Media Studio with DIA Annual Meeting Patient Partner Ella Balasa. Ella, thank you very much for being here today and for taking time for this interview. I'd like to start by giving you the opportunity to introduce yourself, the work you do, and some of the organizations that you work with.
Yes, thanks, Chris. And my name is Ella Balasa. I am a patient advocate, and I live with cystic fibrosis. And CF is a rare genetic lung disease characterized by buildup of mucus in the lungs that causes decreasing in lung capacity over time, and then eventually a shortened life expectancy. So over the past couple of years, I've been increasingly involved in patient advocacy and bringing the patient voice and perspective into drug development. I have a biology background, so initially I was working in volunteer capacities with the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation and a number of other patient organizations in helping to bridge the gaps between patient communities and more broadly the research and healthcare industry. So I just started out with providing the patient input into the design of clinical trials, helping sponsors and industry understand what's important for patients to study, where could there be alleviation of burdens when it comes to trial participation for patients. And then also helping to distill, on the patient side, helping to distill clinical information for patients to understand more about cystic fibrosis and about new research that was happening in this space. And as I said, like having that science background, I felt that I was in a very unique position to have this like elevated perspective, you could say, to help to, as I said, bridge these gaps and have that help to build collaborative relationships between patients and organizations.
So where did you go to school? Where's your biology degree?
So I went to Virginia Commonwealth University. I'm from Richmond, Virginia. So that's where I was born and raised, and then went to college there and have lived there majority of my life.
Excellent, thank you.
So yeah, go ahead.
So it's just an opportunity to let you continue.
Yeah.
I'd like to give the audience a chance to hear some of the success stories. Where do you feel you, as an independent advocate, have made a difference? Please mention as many specifics as you can, projects, organizations, understanding that some of your work may be proprietary and you may not be able to share as many details.
Sure.
But where have you made the biggest difference?
So I'll definitely address some specific examples.
Please do.
And then more broadly too, just share kind of the areas of work that I'm now doing.
Excellent, thank you.
So I've, at this point now I consult with pharma companies, biotech companies, digital health companies, some patient engagement firms as well. Basically helping to, again, bring that patient voice into improving products and solutions for patients. So I sit on a number of patient advisory boards. One of those being with Metadata. They have a pretty robust patient advisory board, and we are, as a group of patients with various different disease area expertise, give input into how their patient-facing solutions and patient-facing clinical trial softwares can be improved for patients, for patient participants in trials. So in addition to that, as I said, I do a lot of clinical trial protocol reviews, again, helping to give input on how, mostly that has been in the cystic fibrosis space, but helping to give input on how, there can be an improvement or changes made in these protocols to make it less burdensome for patients and easier and more accessible, easier for them to participate. I also help to provide feedback on plain language summaries. So these are like, after research has been conducted, the output, or the kind of the summaries of what research was conducted that are patient facing and or I guess lay language, lay person facing, and helping to make sure that it is easy to understand and that patients are going to actually derive value from reading some of these materials. And then when it comes to some of the smaller like startups and biotechs, I really try to emphasize the importance of engaging with patients, with patient populations early in the development of their solution or their products, so that their solution or their product can actually benefit the patient community and will actually be utilized and there will be uptake. So it's really this mutual benefit
Excellent.
for both patient communities and industry and vendors, where they're creating for example, a technology or a wearable device or something, and they want to understand, or a patient-facing app, right? And they need to know what do we need to think about, what do we need to include that's actually going to be beneficial to the population that we're targeting.
Excellent.
So I
Excellent.
try to really drive that home in the consulting work that I do, and making sure that they're helping them to bring in these voices early. So that's working to maybe set up some of these advisory boards for them, helping to bring in patient perspectives, individual patient perspectives, and both from people that are just patients, as far as somebody who's participated in a trial as a participant, all the way through to patient advocates like myself who have experience and expertise in working with industry already and being able to provide input that can be meaningfully implemented. So I think that it's important to have this range of patient experiences provided to companies.
Do you do any work post-market? In other words, after a product is approved, is there a room for advocacy in that space after a product is approved and getting it to the patients who use it? Is there space for your work in that space?
So I've done some work post-market approval, primarily in the marketing area, I would say, where, for example, I've worked with Vertex in helping to create some marketing campaigns as a patient who has been on, Vertex has created a drug for cystic fibrosis. And so I've been on a couple of social media campaigns, kind of bringing awareness to the drug and, life with cystic fibrosis. So I have done some things like that.
Okay.
I've also done some public speaking engagements, so sharing my lived experience and my journey with cystic fibrosis to industry, and really those that kind of work on the back end, and maybe they're working more on the research side of things, or on the sales side of things. They don't really have that interface with patients, and so I think it's very important to for them to understand and to humanize the patient experience, so that they can better understand their mission and the work that they're the purpose of the work that they're doing.
Yeah.
So I kind of some of the engagement opportunities have been on that side too, and sharing. For example, last year I went to Genentech. I spoke. They create a drug for cystic fibrosis as well, called Pulmozyme, and so they invited me to speak to one of their manufacturing facilities, and all the people that work at their manufacturing facility, to understand what the drug that they're creating. Who is that for, and what's the story behind some of the patients that
So how was that received? Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
How was that received?
It was a wonderful experience, honestly. It was just, it was very it was empowering for me, and just very, even though they, all the attendees really just said, "Oh, you're so inspiring," and it's so wonderful to hear your story. But conversely, I also felt inspired by, the countless people, just the sheer amount of people that are working so tirelessly to create ultimately a better life and better experience for me.
I couldn't thank you enough for that segue, because the next question I'd like to ask you, and I want to break it into two parts. I'd like to ask you, generally speaking, and you mentioned protocol development. If you could wave a magic wand and make one area of clinical research easier for patients, what would that be? And then the second part of that is, in the specific area of cystic fibrosis, where is the biggest current need for research? So sort of generally patient engagement, but then specifically where and how can we help cystic fibrosis?
So I'd say generally, I think there's just a need for patients to be involved earlier in the process of drug development. I think that a lot of that is still very much lacking. I've often been brought on to provide input into protocol reviews and things, but that's once the protocol has already been developed, and then maybe there can be some like slight tweaks and enhancements or changes made, and thinking about maybe we can cut down a few of the study visits, maybe we can think about how we can maybe make some virtual visits or reduce the number of tests or the frequency of these blood draws and things like that. But if we, and this kind of takes me down the road of where I want to talk about specifically with CF, is that I think there's just a real need to innovate the design of clinical trials in the sense that we are able to be more inclusive of diverse populations. And specifically in CF, so Vertex created a drug that helps a majority of patients. So CF is caused by a number of different mutations cause the disease.
Okay.
And so there's a subset of mutations that have been helped by the drug that was created by Vertex, but there is a small population that does not benefit from that drug.
Okay.
And so there is a real need to find, especially moving towards gene therapies, right, as we're moving toward gene therapies, to find solutions that are disease agnostic and they help all mutations of the disease. So that's really where I see a great need and great value in. And then as we move forward in the gene therapy space, kind of going back to what I was saying, being more inclusive of diverse populations in the sense that, for example, I actually haven't been able to participate in a clinical trial for majority of my adult life because I have, going back to the point of having lung disease, so I have very low lung function, meaning that I have, it's a measure of FEV1, that's forced vital capacity, and I've had about 30 to 35% lung function for the last over 10 years of my life. And so in cystic fibrosis, for all new investigational drugs, the cutoff, the exclusion criteria is anything below 40%.
Oh.
And so this really excludes a portion of the CF population who can't participate in trials.
I would say 40%, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not exactly skewed in that way, but it's still a portion of the population that is not able to participate in trials yet. There is with the advancement of some of these drugs, we're having much more stability in our health, and so basically the idea behind, and I don't want to go down a rabbit hole here, but I really see a need for developing adaptive trial designs.
I was hoping to hear you say that.
Because,
thank you.
Thinking about ways that these, there can be other cohorts of patients with traditionally, excluded populations that can be included in these trials. Maybe it's data that's, accumulated separately from the main arm of the trial, right? Maybe it's not necessarily presented to FDA in that way, but is actually the topic that I'm speaking on my panel tomorrow.
Excellent.
So it's good that we're kind of having a foray into it
excellent.
now.
That's great.
And it's really just thinking about how industry, regulatory, and patient organizations can really work collaboratively to help innovate trial designs and making sure that, the regulatory FDA recognizes some of these novel endpoints and the use of digital endpoints and things of that nature. So capturing other ways, mainly, in this example, not using FEV1 of 40% as the primary endpoint to exclude other patients like myself, but thinking about other ways that we can measure the efficacy of a drug and expand the population and use alternate endpoints.
Excellent.
So that's, I think, that was a long tangent to say that I think this can be applicable to a lot of conditions.
Absolutely.
So,
It's a framework that would apply nicely in this specific disease area,
right.
but could be extrapolated out to
Right.
any or many rare disease areas.
Exactly.
Another one that wasn't on the list,
Yeah.
but you're really doing such a great job. Technology. Mm-hmm. We have seen people, decentralized trials. Technology has been a genuine blessing.
Yes, certainly.
No opportunity comes without its challenges or risks. And maybe there is no answer, but have digital wearables, electronic reported outcomes, have those kinds of things been helpful in the CF community, making trials more accessible to them, or has that not really made an impact yet?
I mean, wearables are certainly utilized in CF trials when it comes to using, even in clinical care practice, using like at-home spirometers. So these measure the lung function volume. And so this is since COVID, right? Like since we had a lot of uptick of telehealth, then actually the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation provided spirometers to I think all CF patients pretty much in the US.
Okay.
And so like this digital technology, and I guess it's not a wearable, but yeah, digital technology has been used for the last number of years, and patients are able to monitor lung function at home and have the value and understand and be able to monitor that themselves. So this is widely used in cystic fibrosis trials now, as well as measuring blood oxygen levels through a pulse oximeter and kind of having that data relayed directly into apps, for patient outcomes measures and things. So that is pretty widely used, I would say.
It's a cliche, I guess, but is it connecting clinical research more closely to clinical care?
Hopefully,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, I think that's the most honest answer.
Yeah, I think that, certainly there are a lot of opportunities for that to occur. When it comes to how much, when we think about how much of the data that's captured in clinical care, how much of that is actually being transferred and utilized in clinical research, I think that there should be more of it used, and it's so easy to pull that data into it and use that in trials, and thinking about like natural history studies, or just really just reducing that repetitiveness and that redundancy and that extra coming back to the point of reducing patient burdens. Utilizing some of that data that's already captured in clinical care and reducing the need of that to be captured again within a clinical trial process. So I think that there's a lot of value in that, but I don't think it's always being done, but hopefully you can see more of that.
You've been remarkable. Thank you very much. For the last question, where does Ella Balasa go from here? What do you hope to take from the meeting to advance in your own work? And then how do you hope your work will help the broader community advance in cystic fibrosis and in patient care in general? What do you hope to take from this event back home?
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to, and already have been, networking with as many people as I can. So, and that's kind of twofold. I want to connect with biotech startups, as I said in the beginning, helping smaller pharma and research organizations to understand why it's important to capture input from patients early on in the development of their products and solutions, because I want to drive home that it really is this mutual benefit that they are going to be developing products and support for patients, treatments for patients that are actually going to have meaningful impact and support patients' needs and meet them where they are and what patients' needs exactly, where patient needs lie. And then it's going to help patients too, because we're, going to be able to use a device better and have the solution, have it be more meaningful to our needs and how it can best serve us and improve our health outcomes. So that's really one of my primary focuses is just really making sure that overall the healthcare industry and the clinical research industry understands why patients are an essential piece, and why we need a seat at that table. And I think that it's being understood and it's being embraced. I mean, I think, given that I am speaking on that panel tomorrow, with the FDA, with Transcelerate, a number of other industry representatives as well, I think that's, goes to show that at least we're part of this conversation to a degree. And then going back to your original question, I also want to connect with the patient communities that are present here as well. I know some of the other patient advocates that are present and some of the patient advocacy organizations that are represented, because I want to, I think it's so important for us to collaborate and have that shared understanding and experience, and just share what's been working and understand what's been working in other disease areas.
Right.
And how I can take that back to my own work, my own disease area, and kind of gaining a better picture and understanding of, what has worked for other organizations and collaborating with industry, what I could do better, basically just understanding more about the space. I think that's just that's always one of my main goals as an advocate who really just started out as an advocate in this space, just as a patient who's kind of taken it upon myself to learn more about my disease, learn more about the healthcare and research and pharma industry as a whole, and learn more just through experiences, have learned about the connections of all of these stakeholders and how there can be better collaboration and co-creation through, us all working together, not in siloed work, but, in a lot of, and helping to be a part of these opportunities and solutions for ultimately better care for patients.
I don't know that our marketing team could have written a better commercial for the Global Annual Meeting than what you just said.
Thank you.
I wish I had the words to tell you how I thoroughly enjoyed this interview. You're a great speaker.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you for making time for us. I really do wish you a great meeting and beyond.
Thank you.
And beyond.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me.
These are all our questions for today. For DIA, I am Chris M. Slowacki.